Supercar versus motorcycle video.
Yeah, right?
Oh. It's all right. Hey, it's got a cage.
That's why it's got a cage.
Exactly. That's insane, bro.
Pretty loud, actually.
Welcome to today's video. This is CJ Clark and his, what is this?
This is a McLaren 750S.
No, this is your Santa's sleigh.
This is Santa's sleigh, and I'm literally Santa Claus.
This is my Ducati Hyper 698. Today we're going to be comparing these two super bikes, supercars
Versus Supermoto.
Supermoto.
Yeah.
I thought this would be a fair comparison because how much does this car cost?
I got it for about $415,000.
$415,000
About,
versus
give or take.
$14,000.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a little bit of disparity between the cost of the car and the cost of the bike. However, I think that the comparison that we're going to try to make today is how much fun can you have, like dollar per mile on a McLaren? Like how much fun are you having?
The reality is, like, these are both toys, and this is like obviously $15,000 versus $400,000. Can you have just as much fun? I don't know. Maybe, probably.
You see a lot of people making comparisons between like their Honda Civic and their motorcycle. So I thought this would be a much more fun comparison between a supercar and the Supermoto. So
Yeah.
we're going to be talking about a few different subjects here, but let's just jump into the rest of today's video in 3, 2, 1.
Everyone shits on McLaren for being like poor build quality and unreliable. It's great. It's amazing. I've had two of them. I've never had a single issue with it. The inside of this, if you guys look, like everything in this car is built perfectly. It's perfectly laid out. Everything, it looks super simple, which a lot of people like get hate on. They're like, oh, Ferrari's like, the inside looks so much better. There's so many buttons and dials and blah, blah, blah. You don't want those. You want everything to be super simplistic. Imagine you're going 200 miles an hour on a racetrack and you're like, oh, I need to change a setting. And you have to go, like, no, you don't want to do that. You know, you like in the McLaren, right? So this is your handling, this is your powertrain, right?
Do you mind turning it on so we can see the screen real quick?
Absolutely.
Look, that's a lovely little, oh my God.
So you'll let it warm up. It'll say McLaren. Now I will say the 720 was a little cooler because it like flipped up, but this is a lot more functional. So the steering wheel and the dash is all one piece. So if I wanted to raise it, once it wakes up for a second, you're raising it as one giant thing, right?
Oh my
so the
God.
steering wheel is always gonna be at the perfect level of the dash, right? So like if you mess with it, again, it's always gonna be right here in the perfect spot. And track and sport, I would say sport is a little more fun. It's a lot tweakier, it's a little bit louder, it gives you some more pops and gurgles, but track is a lot smoother and it's a little faster. You got your launch control button here, which if you set that, obviously I'm in neutral and the doors are up, but
I think you made a lot of excellent points on that. So this is my Ducati 698, obviously has a wonderful little screen that we can get into right here. This is what I get on my screen. Isn't that really cool? So you get really none of the cool functionality that you get on the McLaren, but however, you do get tons of little electronic modes. So traction control modes, wheelie control modes, ABS modes. That's about it. That's about all the customization that you get. You get this awesome little screen with a tachometer right there and no gas gauge whatsoever. You do have 4 selectable power modes: road, urban, wet, and sport. All customizable to what you want. And you said you had 6,000 miles on your car in what, 3 months? Mm-hmm. Well,
Yeah,
I do own a couple of motorcycles, so this is not reflective of all of my riding habits, but yes, only 2,100 miles in, I don't know, I bought this bike in summer, so. You do get to ride your motorcycles a lot less compared to a car, unfortunately. It's a lot harder to daily a bike like this, especially where I'm from in Ohio, where it rains all the time and you're exposed a little bit to the elements. Keep that in mind. But I just find the comparison between the infotainment and all the customization settings that you get on the McLaren, you aren't getting that on a motorcycle. You can buy things like adjustable rear sets and adjustable handlebars, but these are all things that you have to buy and purchase on your own. These are not things that come adjustable from the factory. So, and that's the case for pretty much every motorcycle on the planet. So how is your McLaren to work on?
believe it or not, I don't have to pay for anything that happens with this car. So the only thing that has happened with this, one of the LED lights got unplugged, which again, you just had to like plug it back in, but you do have to like go into the car to plug that back in. And the start button went out, which again, it's a little scary because one day, like everything's working fine and then the car just doesn't start. And you're like, oh my gosh, like all these horror stories of McLarens start running through your mind and you're like, oh, I'm screwed. This is gonna be like thousands of dollars. And then you bring it in and they're like, no, it's just the button, and they switch it out for free. And they're like, here you go. So I will say, it is always the move if you're gonna get a supercar. One, talk to your CPA about this, but always lease these things. Always lease them. You can buy them out at the end of a lease, but always lease them. By leasing these cars, one, you get to write it off, which is huge because usually it has to be over 5,500 pounds to be able to write a car off. But two, when something does go wrong, and obviously with exotic cars, something will go wrong eventually, whether you're driving a McLaren or a Lamborghini or a Rolls or whatever it is, something will happen. You don't have to pay for them. It's not technically your car. This car, technically it's not mine. It's still the bank's car. I lease it, you know? I'm just borrowing it from them and paying a lot of money to do that, you know? But when something does happen, any inspections I want, anytime I want to bring it in and like get something worked on, or let's say I curb a wheel, right? If I curb a wheel, they will switch the wheel out for free. I don't have to pay for it. If I pop a tire, they give me a new tire for free. So the idea with McLaren is they say, well, if you're going to be driving our cars, we want it to be pristine. We want it to be perfect. We want it to be super nice. We don't want you driving around with fucked up wheels. Excuse my language, but it's true. They just switch it for you.
Demonetized, thank you.
Oh, yeah, no problem. So I just bring it in for like the regular maintenance, and you know, every once in a while, again, like the LED light will go out or something like that. But just little things that happen in every car, nothing any more hectic or any worse or more unreliable in the McLaren than any other car. So yeah, I mean, I've got a Porsche as well, and I would argue that this car is just as reliable as the Porsche. So, which again, it might be an unpopular opinion, and maybe I've just had a couple really good McLarens, but it's my experience with it, you know, and I can only talk about my experience. I can't talk about anyone else's. All in all, this car has costed me $0 to maintain, which is awesome.
I can't say that about my Ducati, unfortunately. The Ducati...
You want me to model this for you?
Yeah, sure, you can if you want. I can't say that about the Ducati. Of course, I own this bike in full. I paid full price for this bike. The bank doesn't own it. I own it. I have the titles. But unfortunately, with that, I don't even think Ducati offers that if you lease these. I mean, they have a leasing program, but like I don't think that
I don't know why you would lease a motorcycle, you know.
I mean, yeah, that's the thing. It's cheaper. It's way cheaper than the McLaren. So yeah, like you could buy these in cash outright without having to be somebody special. But the crux of that is I have to pay for all the maintenance.
Did you look at me when you said someone special?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
That's so nice. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me.
Well, I'm saying like anybody working any job in the world, as long as like their finances are straight and like they're not spending money on
20 kids.
Yeah, you know. Dumb kids.
Yeah.
Anybody can afford a motorcycle in cash eventually, given enough hard work.
Yeah.
Especially a bike like this that is not insanely overpriced. These things like MSRP, I think around like 12 or 13 grand. These are incredibly reasonable.
And they have good financing options even other than leasing. Like you could put $5,000 down and you have, you know, $100 a month payment or something like that.
Yeah. So, but the point is, I have to pay for all the maintenance on this bike. I usually take this bike into Ducati because I like the idea of having the factory warranty. If anything goes wrong on this bike, this was professionally maintained, and I don't have to worry about like an engine blowing up and all of a sudden I have a $13,000 paperweight. So while it's under warranty, I like getting it professionally maintained. However, I do my own maintenance on my motorcycles, such as my MT-07 that's out of warranty, and I can tell you, it's actually not that bad.
Yeah, they make it very difficult on this to do any work on it. Like if you want an oil change, you have to take the whole engine out of the bottom of the car. You have to like lift it up, drop the whole thing out, change the little thing, put the whole engine back in. So there's nothing you can do on this yourself at all.
Preventative maintenance is going to be a pain on this thing. If you had to do, like let's say you own this thing and you had to do everything yourself.
If I had to do it myself, oh my gosh, I would need to find a guy and I'd need to find a shop by my house that can do it all for me, because you cannot touch this. Yeah, you need torque wrenches that can take everything apart, like for the center lock wheel. Luckily, I don't have center lock wheels, so I don't need like 6 dudes freaking jumping on a 10-foot.
Oh no. Boy. Bikes like the Ducati V4 is going to require a little bit. I've been famous for saying that, like, yeah, you could probably get a professional to work on bikes like that. Or my H2, for example, that has like special parts and tools that are required for the turbine on that bike.
Got a turbo on it.
But even on this Ducati, this is still a Ducati. This is supposed to be like, oh, a special bike. You don't need special tools to work on this bike. So this bike has 2 drain plugs. It has one in the rear, one in the front. I assume because this is like marketed as a wheelie bike that they have a separate oil catch system that sends it up to the top end when you're in a wheelie. That still is only like a regular 12 millimeter or 14 millimeter drain plug for both. Don't need special tools to work on this bike. This bike does have Desmo valves, which complicates things a little bit, unfortunately.
What is that?
Desmo valves are a system of valve. It's like a Ducati's specialty valve system. They used it ever since the 60s.
Okay.
And the crux of it is, instead of using springs to close the valves on the bike, it uses Desmo valves, which forces valves to be shut. There are people who are much better at explaining this than I am.
That's okay. I get the general idea.
Basically, it makes it way more complicated. But if you were going to take on that job yourself, yourself, this would be the bike to do it because it's only one cylinder. It only has 4 Desmo valves.
Interesting.
It's much easier to work on this bike than a V4.
So I'm throwing my phone in here. I don't have pockets.
You're good. Oh, I thought you were going to charge your phone in the car, which is something I can't do on the bike.
I don't have pockets.
Lovely.
Oh, yeah, you can't charge your phone on a bike.
Nope. He texted me on the way here and I couldn't read it because my phone's in my pocket.
I wasn't driving when I texted.
No, you weren't.
I was not driving.
Yeah, you were here
already.
Yeah, no,
I want to put
that wasn't my
out
point.
there.
My point, well, you could text and drive if you wanted to.
I could do this.
I can't text and drive.
Text at ThoughTaken.
Yeah. I can't do that. So that's what's cool. I cannot text and drive.
Hey Siri.
Unfortunately.
Hey Siri. Change my song.
Hey Siri, can you massage
Siri.
my asshole?
Hey Siri, hit the massage seats.
Yeah, no, you don't get any of those special amenities on a bike. But yeah, in terms of maintenance, while this is going to be easy to work on, you are going to be working on these things much more often. And that's because of that thing, a chain. So this is driven by a shaft. That requires basically no maintenance. Maybe you have to, I mean, this is a supercar. Maybe you have to replace it every 50, 100,000 miles. On most cars, you're never replacing that. It's going to outlast the life of the car.
Yeah.
Now, there are some motorcycles that come with shaft drives, but those are boring and suck because it sucks away power. Cars are so powerful, the amount of horsepower loss from being a drive shaft is like, it's negligible. On a motorcycle, however, since they're making a lot less horsepower, they're mostly chain driven because it has the least amount of power loss between the crankshaft and the rear wheel. The crux of that is, unfortunately, that chain needs to be tightened and lubed and cleaned every 300 to 500 miles.
Really?
Yeah.
3 to 500?
Yep.
That's like a daily ride for me.
Yep. And
What?
so if you go on a nice, very long daily ride, now,
Oh, what?
there are some people who
3 to
neglect their chains
500.
and they get away with it for the most part, but I am not one of those people. I maintain this thing meticulously, which is why my chain looks so good.
I can imagine you with a little toothbrush, like going through every little part.
I mean, that's not really far off from what you have to do. But yeah, it is unfortunately something that you have to take into account when buying a motorcycle and riding it. Now, I'm lucky that this bike has oil change intervals every 9,000 miles, I believe. So you could go 9,000 miles without having to change the oil, which again is very easy to do yourself.
Yeah.
And the valves need to be checked every 18,000 miles, which is a little bit more of a bigger job, but again, not that bad compared to most motorcycles.
Yeah. I've only ever had Yamaha sport bikes and the CF Moto, but even the CF Moto was still a little, I guess it was similar, but
Yeah.
the R6 and the R1 were both, very leaned over. So like it was fun, but it's not like the most comfortable thing.
Next segment, we're gonna call Practicality.
I think this car, supercars in general, they get a pretty bad rep for being impractical, but I don't think they're as impractical as people think, but they're definitely not practical, okay? I do have AC. It gets hot, right? Oh, turn the AC on. Ooh, now I'm cold. Now I'm chilly, shivering, It's really low to the ground. I can touch the ground and, luckily, I'm gonna turn this on for a second, but if you look, I do have a lift system once it wakes up. If you see that, I can raise it up. So like, if I want to drop it, I just hit this button. Oh, it'll raise, but it won't lower. So I just hit that button, it'll go up and down, right? So that is really nice because it actually gives you a good amount of clearance to where like most dips in the road, most speed bumps, like you're not gonna scrape on it unless you
But you're not driving around like that, are you?
No. After 30 miles an hour, it goes down on its own. So like if you hit a pothole, you're gonna go like that every time. It's gonna hurt, you're gonna cringe, it's gonna be really bad.
I can only imagine on Cleveland roads too.
Yeah, oh, it's bad. It's a race car, It's really rough suspension. In comfort, like it loosens up a little bit, but it's still a McLaren. Like it's rough, Like there's no body roll still, Like when it comes to like what the car is meant for, it's really practical in that aspect. If you look at the front, there's actually a good amount of room. There's more room in the front of this than my 911. Now it's very packed, and I've got some Christmas presents and a lot of random clothes, but it's a good amount of space. If you guys look, if I shove all the stuff to the side, you can like sit in it, Like there's a good amount of room, You can't do this in like a lot of cars.
Shut this so it can just keep you away.
You can get all your groceries in it. I can take it to Costco if I really want. If there's a curb higher than this high, you're gonna just slam into it and completely mess up the front of your car. This bike, on the other hand, you can just hop it. You can just kind of go boop, boop, no problem, super easy. But when it comes to like day to day, I can have passengers, I can put stuff in the seat, I can like get in, relax. If my legs hurt, I don't have to worry about
heat.
Yeah, if I go to the gym and hit leg days, I'm not gonna worry about like putting my foot down and like crumpling and like falling over at a stoplight,
Yeah.
Like it's gonna be not the most comfortable thing to get in and out of, but it's still like once I'm in it, you can just sit and relax, heated seats, cooled seats, like.
Again, this is like a really fancy supercar. They're not all like this. but this is a really low to the ground car. And so if you were to come up on like a Cleveland pothole and smack that bitch, it's gonna hurt. You're gonna make the face. Yeah, that's the face that you're gonna make
every
when you
time.
slam into a pothole.
Just thinking about it makes me cringe. Yeah.
Which
I've
obviously
done
it's
that
not
in
gonna
San
total
Diego.
out the car, but
no, but you're sitting there being like, oh, like, am I gonna need an alignment? Like, am I gonna like need to take this to service tomorrow? Like, oh.
Meanwhile, on the motorcycle, again, this is a really drastic version of a motorcycle. Even most sport bikes are going to have more ground clearance than something like a supercar. Now, this bike is particularly special, again, because it's a supermoto. It has a massive amount of ground clearance. And so you can literally, like that curb right there, you may not want to run at it at full speed, but if I were to slowly approach it and give it enough throttle, I can absolutely climb that curb and be totally fine. And so that there is an advantage to riding a motorcycle, practicality wise, riding it around. Yeah, you don't get the storage space, and the any passengers that you take aren't going to be as comfortable as in the Mclaren with the, you know, the cooled and heated air conditioning and all that stuff. But on a nice summer day, which you would typically be enjoying a vehicle like one of these, the bike is going to be a little bit more practical riding around the city.
I agree.
Sometimes.
I agree.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
This next segment, we're going to be doing a sound check. So CJ's going to be doing a quick pull on his 750 up and down here real quick, and then I'm going to be taking a turn on mine. And you guys, the viewers, get to decide who sounds better. Are you happy with that?
Pops or bangs or anything like that until you really warm the car up.
So there are pops and bangs usually.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So after the sound test, there's one more thing I want to touch on, and that is exhaust laws as it applies to cars and motorcycles.
We do.
Cops, yeah, they freaking hate us.
Yeah, they don't like us.
They make both of us. I mean, supercars and motorcycles, cops usually hate.
Yeah, so the nice thing about this car and the area that I live in, obviously this is different depending on where you live, but the police here, they don't get paid based on how many tickets they write. It doesn't really matter to them how many tickets they write. They don't have a certain amount, like, they don't have a certain quota they have to hit per month, so at the end of the month, they're not like ticketing everyone for everything. So the nice thing, they'll never really ticket you if you're driving a car like this because they kind of know you'll just pay it and keep speeding, you know? So the idea with cops, at least the ones I've talked to, is they'll pull you over and they're gonna be like, oh, like my ticket reader is broken today. And then they're gonna be like, look, man, like just slow it down. They'll have a conversation. And the idea with them is like, we're gonna try to be chill with you because you're a young guy in a nice car. And we know if we're chill with you, you'll probably respect us more and slow down in these areas. Then if we just be a dick, give you a ticket and send you on your way, I'll just pay it, you know? Like that's kind of the thought at least. Obviously for me, I'd be like, damn, my insurance is gonna get all messed up. But it's still the same thing of like, they're looking at this being like, this young kid is just gonna pay the ticket and keep speeding. So they'll never ticket you. They'll just arrest you if you're going too fast, you know? And they will arrest you for sure. But yeah, so like that's kind of nice. Exhaust on this, I've never been pulled over for loud exhaust, but in the area, especially by the beach, there is signs everywhere that's like loud exhaust enforced, you know, and they do crack down on that quite a bit in California. I do think it's pretty exaggerated how much they crack down on it, because man, I've heard some like loud exhaust, and cops are like, rev it up, like, you know, because they're all like car guys too, especially motorcycle cops around here. Like a lot of them are just motorcyclists who like became police officers, not police officers who started riding motorcycles, right? So a lot of them are pretty chill around here. My exhaust gets really loud as I warm it up. You know, as I start to drive it more, there's tons of pops and bangs. If I'm on the gas and I let go, it's gonna sound like fireworks going off. It's gonna sound absolutely ridiculous, you know? That being said, most cops look at this and they know, well, it's probably still stock.
The fact of the matter is, this car to CJ, this is fully stock. Yeah. And in the state of California, as long as it's stock, he's not doing anything wrong.
No.
He can rev it out as much as he wants.
I can rev it up, I can let it pop and bang. It's stock, it's
However,
legal.
In California, they do have motorcycle exhaust laws, and that's something to be aware of. So technically in California, if I was a resident here and I owned this motorcycle with that full straight pipe exhaust that you just heard.
Oh, you'd be ticketed, maybe jail, impounded bike, like.
Maybe not super often, because I haven't had any problems so far, but yes, if I do modify my bike, I am within the law.
The issue is it's more they're looking as it like as a secondary offense. So if you get pulled over for something and they don't like you, they're gonna use that as an excuse to like.
In the definition of the law, as it's written in the book, by modifying that exhaust, I'm technically breaking the law,
Yes.
which is not the case where I'm from.
Jail now.
Yeah, in Ohio, they still have car exhaust laws. So in that same state, you can still get ticketed for modifying your car exhaust, but for my motorcycle, I'm within my full legal right. I've been pulled over many times in Ohio.
Okay.
I'm within my full legal right to modify that exhaust and ride it around as much as I will.
Oh, see, that's nice. It's the exact opposite here.
Yeah.
Like,
That's my point. Yeah, while California is an exception to this, it's generally accepted across the entire country that motorcycles are exempt from exhaust laws.
Yeah.
I don't have to get e-checks. I don't have to do any of that.
No smog. No.
Nope.
Yep.
Nothing.
Yep.
I own the bike. It's my bike to do with whatever I want with. So the last thing I just wanted to touch up on is the fact of the matter is CJ can buy this car with his normal driver's license that he got when he was 16 years old, I assume, right? 16? Okay. He bought this car with that same license that he got when he was 16 and has been driving it around just fine. He can buy this car. He could have bought this car whenever he wanted as long as he had the money and he was legally allowed to drive it.
That's the harder part. Yep.
Yeah.
For sure. But
in terms, the hard part is just being able to buy it and afford it.
But no special license necessary. You don't have to take any extra classes. No, like.
Which is insane.
Yeah.
It's honestly insane considering it's
I would argue that
$700
this is harder to drive than a motorcycle.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the bike, you have to go get a special license, which is not that hard to get, by the way. Yeah. You have to answer like a 20 question, depending state to state.
Yeah.
In Ohio, it's like 20 questions. You can go in, it's like multiple choice, and you can go get your temps, and then you have to take a test in order to get your full license.
See, here it's you have to get your permit first, and either way, even if you're over 21 or under 21, but if you're under 21, you have to take like a full week class.
It's still like crazy. You have to get a special license to drive these things, even though they're not really that hard to ride. But
you have to get your motorcycle license.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
Yeah.
His point, exactly. A lot of people just end up skipping that step, but again, in terms of the law,
you should get it.
Yeah. In
and
terms
safety-wise and insurance-wise, if you do take the motorcycle class, you get like an insurance cut versus just getting your like license as well.
Exactly. The fact that you can get insurance without a license is kind of funny because they kind of know.
Yeah.
That has been supercars versus motorcycles. I know we don't have the best example of each. Obviously, if we were comparing like a more practical car, it would destroy the bike in every step.
I will say, like Lamborghinis compared to this, a Lamborghini is exponentially more practical than a McLaren, just off the like, well...
I'm not even talking in terms of like supercars. Like you think of like a BMW M2, that's going to be way more practical than a motorcycle. So the car world is like, yes, there's a lot of more practical options. I just thought this was an interesting comparison, comparing a fascinating car to a fascinating bike.
Absolutely.
And there are more impractical bikes than even this bike. So like a Yamaha R1 is going to have a lot less ground clearance and going to be way more uncomfortable. So
and hard to ride at like 10 miles an hour. Like,
experiences vary. So obviously, if you guys want to see more comparisons like this, please let me know what kind of cars and bikes that you want to compare next.
Thank you for watching.
Yeah, in terms of what we meant to accomplish here, I think we did everything that we wanted to. Shout out to CJ. Thank you for letting me use your car. I hope you guys are having a good one. We're going to go have fun and go get something to eat or something. So, yeah. See you guys. Bye-bye.